we're always documenting other people and our kids and their lives and their points of view. And I feel so strongly that I wish that I had that of my parents. So I keep thinking my kids will eventually want that about me.
Welcome to Scrapbook Your Way, the show that explores the breadth of ways to be a memory keeper today. I'm your host, Jennifer Wilson, owner of Simple Scrapper and author of The New Rules of Scrapbooking. This is episode 176. In this episode, I'm catching up with Veronica Milan about her new podcast, her most used app, and how she distinguishes project life and memory planning in her personal creative practice. Hey, Veronica, welcome back to Scrapbook Your Way.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jen.
Yes, I'm so excited. Our last conversation ended up being kind of short, so I wanted to have you back on just to catch up and see what's going on in your creative world. But can you remind our audience who you are, what you do, where you live, and all that?
Yes, I'm Veronica Milan. I live in Central California and with my husband of almost, I want to say 17 years. Good Lord. And we have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I have a 16-year-old, a now 12-year-old, and she's almost 11. She's counting down the days. This is her birthday month, and she thinks the whole month is her birthday.
Of course.
So we do have one pet. We have a cat named Milo. I think the last time we spoke, I didn't have a pet. And yeah, that's basically it.
So I don't know if I had gotten my cats yet either. So we got 2 kittens in September, I think.
Oh,
And they've just been, oh no, they were born in September. We got them in November. So yeah, they've been growing like crazy. They're like 10 and 12 pounds now already. And they were newborns. So
we got him. I think he was a couple of weeks old. I mean, he was tiny in August.
Mhm.
So I think we're cat
Close.
mamas around the same time. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
just spoil him rotten. He's a rotten cat.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun. So I can't believe we didn't have a cat for so long. So because it's just it makes home life even greater.
All right. I know. My kids are so much happier. And they had been begging for a cat for years. And I'm like, nope, I don't want any pets. Nope. But we caved. We're like, let's fine. And now I'm the one that's like, I'm like, where's mama's fur baby?
Mhm.
So yeah.
You remember all the baby talk you did for your kids with your cat.
Right? It comes back.
Yes. So what's exciting you right now in memory keeping and the scrapbooking world?
Wow. So, well, I guess all the running projects have always been super exciting for me. And as you know, I've learned all from you how to be a great podcast host. So I started a podcast myself, and that's pretty much it. In the creative world, it's just keeping a constant schedule. I'm also on design teams, which I said for sure. I think I said it last time when you interviewed me. I'm like, I don't do design teams. And slowly, people ask me, oh, will you be on this team? And I'm like, okay, sure. And so I've done that. I'm on 3 separate teams. I'm on Cocoa Daisy, a Cherry on Top, and Freckled Fawn.
Oh, that's so fun. I saw Freckled Fawn just came out with a new 12 by 12 kit too.
Yes, her and I go way back when I had a business. We did CHA together, hung out together. She's a mom and pop shop. So she is just a lovely person all around. So she asked me, she's like, hey, can you I think people have noticed that I do reels. And so then, it pops up on their feed and she's like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't even know you were crafting, because for a while I kind of wasn't doing anything. So now we're back.
Yeah, I think we all go through seasons of one thing is more of a focus than the other. And I love that we have so many options today to always meet our interests. There's never a lack of things to make.
Right. You're right. And there's so many different sizes, so many different styles of creating that I can get bored really easily. I mean, I've said it a million times. I've got ADHD. And so I can easily just be like, okay, I don't like the size anymore. Or I've tried the TN size
Mhm.
And, then I find like, "Oh, this is too small, it's too confined," and now I'm back in a TN. Like, currently, I'm like, "I love this size." I'm like, "Where were you all my life?" Like, so
That's how I feel about 12 by 12. I was like, "I'm never doing 12 by 12 again. 8.5 by 11 or smaller." And then all of a sudden I do something and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so fun. It's so amazing. Why have I not been doing this?" So
right, you go back to the space and you're like, "Hey," like, "what?" Because I hardly, do any layouts. I've been doing pocket pages and mini albums, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't wanna do any layouts," but I'm sure I'll jump back in. I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. So this is our storytelling creative journey at Simple Scrapper during May and June. And we always love to ask our podcast listeners, what is on your memory keeping bucket list? So this is one story that you've not yet told, but it feels important to tell.
Ooh, wow. Well, I just missed that story. So forever, I kept thinking that I had written down the story of how I met Albert for my kids,
Hmm.
and I didn't. And it was kind of shocking because I'm like, wait, where's that story? Like, did I put it in a Project Live? Where is it? I know I wrote that story down, and it was all just in my head because I had never written it down. And I created this book out of an old vintage book. And so that's kind of like still a running story. I still have photos in there and I'm
Hmm.
still working on it slowly. And I think it's because it brings back so many crazy memories of the way we met. And because Albert and I met online. And back when we met, that wasn't a thing. We didn't have
Yeah.
what we have now where everybody can meet online and then, become they get married and stuff. And so we used to say, we met at church. Okay. We're going to tell our kids we met at church because it was just so weird, back then. So I ended up making this album for Albert and I, the way we met. And it's in a little vintage book. I went on a mad hunt for this book. And so I'm telling the story of how we met, how we dated. All of the good stuff is in there. And I think I was holding off on it because I didn't want my kids to find it and like read those stories. Not that
Oh,
there's
sure.
anything bad, but they weren't at that age to even ask those questions. And the way it came up was my son, who is now 16 and of course has interest in girls now. And he's like asking more questions about dating and how do you date? And I'm like, oh no, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for it. So I was telling him, well, this is the way I met your father, and this is how long we talked and all of it. And so then I was like, I've never written this down, and I think it needs to be told somehow. So that's a story that I'm currently still working on.
I'm so glad that you're working on that because that's just something that's so rewarding and will be meaningful to your kids someday. And I love that you found kind of a fun way to approach it too. So that's neat.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden pockets in there, and I'm like, if you don't find the story, too bad. Like, that's on you for not opening the pocket. Yeah, I'm still, I don't know why, a little like hesitant over it. Like, oh, I think it's because I was raised so strict,
Hmm.
and I feel like all those subjects are taboo. Like, first kiss, first. I'm like, oh no, we shouldn't talk of that. Like, it's so weird. Uh,
Yeah, no, like I definitely have not scrapbooked that my first kiss with my husband when my now husband was in an airport. And so like it
right.
feels a little sneaky. I don't know, like so, but it's an important part of our story and every time we're at that airport, we always like reminisce about it and so yeah, I
Right.
get it.
Yeah, I grew up, so I'm Mexican American. My parents are very, very strict. Like, I mean, even to this day, I still, and everybody knows this, you shudder from your parents. You're like, "Uh-oh, like I shouldn't be doing that." And when I was dating Albert, one day he came over and I lived alone in my own apartment. Now, mind you, Jen, I was very independent. I had my own car, my own apartment, my own job. I was going to school part-time. I was very much an independent girl, and I
Mhm.
still had this fear of what would my parents think, that, oh my God, a boy's in my apartment. Like, I was
Yeah.
25. I'm like, what are you thinking, woman? But at the time, like, I had dated guys before, And it was so funny because they never understood it. They'd be like, "You're over 18, woman. Stop acting like, you need approval of your parents." And I'm like, "It'll never end. That never ends. You always have to, um, think about what your parents would think." And I hid Albert in the closet.
Aw.
Because my mom came over and I was like, "Oh no, I don't want to even have to ask her. Like, I don't want to talk to her about it. I don't want her to ask me questions about it. Like, why is he here?" I was like, "Oh no." So I was like, "Get in the closet." And he was like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm serious. Get in the closet. Like, hurry." And see, those types of stories are in that book because I remember now in hindsight, I'm like, "Man, you were a weirdo." But you didn't do those types of things. Like when you grew up so strict, even today, like there's still things that I'm like, my parents would never approve of that. Like,
Mhm.
so those
So
stories are
when
in that book.
Yeah, like, it's about how you were raised and what you're used to and what your parents' expectations are, and we all have kind of slightly different experiences, but my husband, he had kind of a similar experience to yours, and he has got so many different stories of, like, his dad didn't speak to him for 3 months because of something that he did, but when we got married, I moved here, and we moved in about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks before our wedding date, and I wasn't gonna go live somewhere else because I was
Right.
moving across the country, but I have 2 stepsons, and so he slept on the couch for those first 2 to 3 weeks
Oh.
until we got married, and then he moved back into the bedroom. So, we did it the way, even though I don't think his mother ever stopped by during that time, but even just with the boys, he didn't want to, give an inappropriate,
Yeah.
impression, I guess. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If his mom had stopped by, you'd be in the closet too, Jen.
yes, I know, totally. So, I wanted to talk just a little bit about what's new with you this year. What are your creative projects? What's working well and what's maybe not working as well?
Yeah. So I have a lot of running projects. It is my third year doing a memory planner.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's been so fun because I feel like, I don't know, I think that in the past before, like I was always busy with either promoting my business, promoting something, working for someone, and promoting product. And I feel like
Mhm.
the memory planner is finally a place where I get to tell all the story, like the little small mundane things about myself. And it's the weirdest thing. Like, I will post things like new vitamins I'm taking, shows I'm watching. Um, and when I look back at them, like I've looked back at my old memory planners, I'm just so excited. Like I could go back and sometimes I'm like, what was the name of that vitamin? And I'm like, oh, I know where it's at. It's in my memory planner. And I'll go back and I'm like, yep, that's the name, and then I'll order it on Amazon. So I find that the memory planner, because I have this question a lot where they're like, what's the difference between your memory planner and your project life? And so the two
Mm,
projects,
good question.
yeah. And the two projects that I have that are running are the Project Life and the Memory Planner. And the Memory Planner is all for me. It's almost like a graphic novel about my life. And that's where I put all of my interests, all of my opinions, and I'm very opinionated. So all of that goes in there, like the shows I'm watching, the music I'm listening to, what's in my purse currently, what's in my refrigerator, my cart, all the things that are all about me. And I always found that was so interesting because before I would say like, "Oh, that's so vain to like scrapbook about yourself like in that much detail." And I now when I think about it, like I wish, because I don't have that many pictures of my mom or my dad, and I wish I had some sort of story behind like the 10 photos that we have of them.
Yes.
Because there's nothing. It's just like the date or, sometimes it's the age. And that's it. And so you're just kind of like, "Oh, but why were you wearing that?" Or why are you standing in front of this house? Or, and there's no story behind it. And so I decided, 3 years ago, I'm like, I'm going to tell bits and pieces of my life from my point of view uh, to my kids. And they may think of this book like meh, but it's really a way for me to process life as well. So I really love the memory planner, and I can't see myself. I actually bought extra memory planners because Crate Paper came out with this memory planner, the template of it, in 2019, and then they swapped the format in 2020.
Oh,
Yeah, and it messed up my groove. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? You can't do that to me. So then I went back and I bought the 2019. I believe I have like four in in a bin because I don't want to lose that format. I love the classic format. Uh,
sure, sure.
and I found that Happy Place, their paper got really thin. And so I can't stamp on there. It bleeds through.
I have heard different things about that. The Happy Planner, like the paper got a little thinner, and then maybe they fixed it in some of the new planners, like the most recent collection. But I have heard some different rumors and mumblings about that.
Yeah. So I made sure I covered my bases and I went and bought the great paper ones from Joann's with a coupon. I'm like, I'll just every week I'll buy another one and I'll just keep them stashed, so I have years to come because I don't see myself ever ending the planner, like the memory planner, all about me. And the project life is more for my kids. I rarely put anything behind the photos. I'll just put the date and their name, kind of like old school, and then I'll slip those in the album because I imagine years from now, they will just want the photos and they'll take them. Maybe my daughter might
Yeah.
want a card, a 3x4 card with some embellishments on it. But for the most part, I think they're just going to take the photos if they want those photos. And that's why the project life is more of a family, a collected album. And the memory planner is more my life, just my life alone.
Oh, I love this distinction and that you have very clear roles and functions for these projects, which also makes it easier to justify doing both of them because they're fun for you.
Right.
And yeah, I would say 80 to 90% of the guests that I've had on this year, and I don't know, maybe it's because, I meet most people on Instagram, but everybody's doing some sort of memory planner.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting format. I've actually not really tried it, except for 1 week in January, maybe 4 years ago.
Right, right.
But I've thought about maybe even just buying one book and doing it just for that period of time. My objective is to say do 16 weeks or even 16 weeks over the course of the year in lieu of like week in the life or day in the life, just to get that snapshot,
Right.
even if I don't feel like I could kind of keep up with it long term. So I'm so intrigued by it.
Yeah, and you know what it does too? It kind of holds me accountable to take more photos because
Mm.
normally I wouldn't take that many photos. And like I said before, I had this really bad stigma of like, you're being so vain, Veronica, stop it. Like, and it's like, stop taking pictures of your food. Like, and because I would do that, like, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm too shy. I don't know what to write about. I don't know where to put it. Like, where am I going to put this picture of my cheeseburger? And so now, like, I will do it freely. And I'm like, I am taking pictures of my sushi, my cheeseburger, whatever I want, because it holds me accountable in all areas. I will see like, oh man, I ate crappy that week. It's like,
Yes.
and it's my reminder of like, yep, I ate out like, 4 or 5 times that week. That's bad, and it'll also show me like, okay, I was on this oatmeal kick. I'm on an oatmeal kick right now. So I love
Mhm.
oatmeal with pecans and blueberries. And I have pictures of that. And so I'm like, oh yeah, like it just kind of, I don't know, it gives me just that snapshot of my point of view, which we don't because as moms, we're always documenting, other people and our kids and their lives and their points of view and what we think about their life.
Mhm.
And I feel so strongly that I wish that I had that of my parents. So I keep thinking my kids will eventually want that about me. Um, and if they don't, that's fine. My 80-year-old self will thank me when I forget things and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember this. So I still feel like that's still my favorite project. Like I still love it so much and I haven't grown tired of it. So I think I'll just continue it until I don't like it anymore.
I love that. That's a great philosophy. So you've mentioned on Instagram, there's one question you get more than any other, and it's related to working primarily on your memory planner. So can you tell me what that question is and what your solution is?
Yes, it's always, how do you size those photos that small? Like that's the
Mhm.
one question over and over. How do you get your pictures that small? Because the classic planner is a 1.4 by 2.4 little tiny picture. And I love to
Yes.
give it a little rim of white around it,
Mhm.
because I just like that look. So people always ask, like, how do you get them that small? And the simple answer is I use an app called Print to Size, and I used to use the selfie printer. And I
Mhm.
found that the selfie printer was not giving me my full 4 by 6 space because they're perforated at the ends, and then it
Correct.
would cut off the photo. And I'd be like, wait a minute. So then I'd have to cut on the side of the perforation. It was just a mess. To me, like, I'm so anal when it comes to certain things like that. And I'm like, oh, it would irk me that I had to leave that perforation there. And so I kept thinking, like, there's got to be a better solution. There's got to be a better printer out there. There's got to be something out there. I was, and then I went to like Walgreens and CVS, and their quality of prints was so awful. Like even
Mhm.
Costco's, they would develop dark, and I'm like, this
Yes.
isn't the color I want. So I wanted more control of what I was printing. I wanted to be able to see it. I wanted to be able to like see it right. And I, of course, I want instant gratification. I wanted to print at home. And so I was looking everywhere, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, I use Print to Size." And so I bought the app. It's $2 for the app. And I realized that you can use any size on that Print to Size, but I use the 8.5 by 11 for the size of the photo paper. And you can stick so many. It's like a little puzzle. You stick as many photos as you want on that size. And I found that that had the most room for those little tiny planner photos. And so I just stick them all on that big sheet of paper, and I have to use HP photo and ink, photo paper and ink, because I've tried to be a cheapo.
It
I laugh. I'm like, I've tried Walmart paper and it just didn't work. Like the colors were not the same. And I've tried cheap HP ink for my HP printer, and nope,
Mhm.
nope, negative commando, don't do that. I learned the hard way. I was like, ooh, this ink is horrible. So I just subscribe to the HP ink subscription that they have. And so I never run out of ink. They know when my printer needs ink, and they just send me the ink in the mail. And so that solved that issue.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't think I wonder if Canon has anything like that because I'm the same way about my Canon paper and ink because
Yeah.
it comes out the best.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, I've tried it all. Like I was trying to like save money here or there, and I'm like, stop doing that. Like, I'm like, just roll with it. That's just how much it costs. And so the HP ink that comes to me is perfect because it goes with the printer, obviously. But I never run out. Whenever I think before, you don't know, you're in the middle of a big old project, and then you realize your ink's gone. You got to go out to Office Depot, wherever you need to get your ink. And then sometimes they don't have it. And you're like, oh my God, like, you're wasting time. So for me, it all just made sense to have it all at home. But that app seriously was my lifesaver because I just put all the photos on there, and I could mix and match. Sometimes I only have like 2 weeks of memory planning and then a couple of photos that I need for a project life. And so I'll mix and match on that same sheet and print them all out.
Oh, very fun. So what printer did you end up getting?
I have an HP Envy.
Okay.
I always say it's a cheapy one, but I don't know why the pictures are so crisp. It's from Amazon. It's like $150. And so I thought, okay, it works for me. It's way better than the Walgreens, CVS, or Costco photos. Like they're
Nice.
crisp. And people will comment on that. They're like, where are you printing? Why is it so crisp? Why are your pictures so clear? And I'm like, it's just a cheapy printer, like a cheapy HP printer. So,
That's amazing. So I'm so glad to hear that. We'll definitely include a link in the show notes
yeah.
to the Print to Size app as well as that printer.
Yes.
So My printer is, like, very massive, so I have been looking for maybe something a little bit more compact for some smaller projects, so
Right, and see, I separate it. Everything is, like, in categories, I swear, it's my ADHD. I
yeah.
I have my photo printer that prints, and that's just strictly photos, and then I have a laser printer where I do everything else, like, anything
Oh,
else
yeah,
you
for
name it.
sure.
Yeah.
We have a laser printer downstairs, so I'm constantly we used to have it networked and then it lost it, so I just email things to my husband saying, "Hey, print this,"
Yep,
because I don't wanna use up my precious ink on printing
exactly.
paper, regular stuff, so
Yep.
okay, so you mentioned that you've been making lots of reels. I'm curious, like, what's your goal with this content? What kind of themes do you choose? And do you have any tips for those who wanna create more reels, whether it's for fun or to grow their following?
Yeah, so, like, okay, at the beginning of the year, I don't wouldn't say I make, like, resolutions or anything like that, but I do set, like, these goals for myself, and they're
Mhm,
always just personal, my own weird goals. Um, so, like, last year, uh, I wanted to reach 10,000 followers on Instagram. It was like a goal of
mhm.
mine. I didn't know what the purpose was for that, but because I was like at 8,000, I was just like, at the end of the year, I want to reach, I've done this all my life. So I just set these goals and I reached it and I was like, wonk, wonk, wonks. There was nothing great about it. I was like, there's nothing here. You know, you're kind of like, okay, I've reached 10,000. Now what? And so it was nothing fantastic to reach that goal. And I thought, okay, next goal, like what else can I do? And um, I wanted to be able to, because I used to not do stories, I used to do nothing except for the posts.
Mhm.
And my son, who is like a video guru, he's the 16-year-old, he's like very artistic. He would make reels for me. Like when I needed a reel, I'd say, like, here, I need it to do this, I need it to do that. And then he'd be like, okay, like step aside. And then he'd make it. And I'd be like, oh, cool. Well, then I started asking him, like, how did you do that? And how did you edit that? And what? And he's like, it's super simple. He was trying to teach me how to make it. And I was like, ooh, that's too much. It's too much for my brain. I can't handle it.
Okay.
So then at the beginning of the year, I told myself, like, "You can do that. You can make a
Yes.
reel. Like, make a reel." And I'm like, "I can't," you know, so here I am fighting with myself, like, "No, I can't do it. I can't." Same goes with the YouTube channel that I have. I hate
Mhm.
hearing my voice, and then I will beat myself up. I'm sure people can relate. Like, I hate my voice, and then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my hands have wrinkles on them," you know? And I'm like, I hate my wrinkles on my hands, you know, and I'll start tearing myself up. And I told myself that reels were going to be my new goal. I was going to make reels and I was going to make 3 months of consecutive reels just to see what happens because I had read somewhere that your following goes up with reels. And I'm like,
Mhm.
let me check this out because I had noticed at the beginning of the year people weren't commenting as much on my posts. And I was like, where did all my people go? Like, you know, you had a consistent following of people who would comment and talk to you online. And I'm like, where do they go? Like, why did people stop commenting? Like, you know, and so like anything, us women, we want validation. We want a purpose as
Yeah.
to why we're sharing and why we're putting all this effort in. And I thought to myself, I'm jumping ship. I'm not doing Instagram anymore because I feel like I'm just doing it for no reason. And of course, you know, I beat myself up and I'm like, you know, you're doing this for your family. Stop trying to like, you know, please others. But at the same time, I was like, what's going on, Instagram? Like, what are you doing? Why are you not showing my posts to people? And I started like reading up on it and it kept saying, like, you know, reels are the new thing because they're keeping up with TikTok. We all know that. And
For
so
sure.
I was like, okay, they just like reels. I'm gonna see if that actually does have any kind of effect, like, you know, reels versus posts. And so I decided I was gonna go on this journey of like, I'm gonna test this thing out. Like I'm gonna post and then I'm also gonna do reels and I'm gonna do reels consecutively to see what happens during that week. And see, this is my nerd coming out in me. So I was like, I'm like, I'm going to analyze this. I'm going to figure it out. You know, so I did a week of reels and I was like, oh, It's true. Like the Instagram would just push my reels, and then I would post and I'd be like, "Look at this pretty picture, guys." And nobody would comment. And I'd be like, "Wait a minute." It's like, "What?" So then I started making more reels and I was like, "Let's see how long I can last with this." And I am on reel number 72 or something like that.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So I'm on a real kick, and it hasn't grown old, but I'm sure it will because I'm starting to get tired of reels. I've been putting more photos in.
Mhm.
It's annoying. It's annoying that that I feel like I'm this puppet on a string for Instagram. So I'm like, you know what? If you don't like my posts, I don't care anymore. Like, yeah. So that's
I
where,
mean, it's hard, like, there is that kind of, I don't know, secret pressure
right,
to do what's going to create more community around the things you're talking about and, continue to, have engagement. It's a really tricky tightrope to walk
right, right.
because you wanna have fun, you wanna enjoy the process, but not everyone likes basically you're creating very short videos, so
yes. And they are long videos. So what you do is you record yourself. The process videos are the hardest ones because
Mhm.
um, you are creating an entire video, and then usually they're like 30 minutes long. And then the really annoying part of it is that Instagram is portrait and YouTube is landscape. So you
Yes.
can't even use that same video for YouTube, the process video, and say, "Hey, here." You can't do that because it'll cut off and you'll have the black ends on the side.
Yep.
So you have to pretty much just create for Instagram. You, of course, can use it on TikTok, but you're pretty much creating just for Instagram and not YouTube. So it's an entire process video silent because I put music over it and it's only a minute. So then you've got to go edit the reel. I know it sounds like a lot of work, and I'm sure your listeners are like, "Oh, woman, stop doing that." But then when you edit it, you have to speed it up because reels are only a minute, and you're cramming in 30 minutes editing out pieces from your video. So it's a lot of work. Um,
It is, yeah.
and you're cutting out pieces and then speeding that entire 30 minutes, 20 minutes by the time you've cut pieces out. It's like 20 minutes of work into a 1 minute reel.
Well, you have to make a decisions about what's actually gonna tell the story of this 30
Yeah.
minutes in that 1-minute segment, so
Yep. That's
have you
another.
figured out any, like, tricks to make it easier, to make it more fun? Um, are you asking your 16-year-old to help?
No, not anymore at all. So I do it
That's
all on
awesome.
my own.
Good for
So
you.
I learned how to do it. And see, the same thing happened with like the podcast. I kept telling myself, I can't do this. I can't do it. There's no way. I hate my voice. I can't. Nope. And at the beginning of the year, I told myself there was three things that I wanted to do: was start a podcast, um, show my face, or talk more online to like
Mhm.
build that community. And the third thing was do more meetups. So like
Oh,
actually
yeah,
meet people in
in
the
person.
community and meet with them. And so I've haven't shown my face. I'm like, I have not shown my face at all because I beat myself up, and I'll say like, no, you have too many wrinkles on your forehead. Like, no, your hair's horrible. Like, so I've done that to myself. And so I'm slowly working on those three goals throughout the year. And they're just my own personal goals. They have nothing to do with anyone out there. It's just all for me.
Well, we should do an Instagram live the week that this episode goes up, just so you can put your face out there and everyone can see how
Oh.
adorable you are.
I'm like, "Oh, no." Yeah, I know. That's the one thing, like, people say like, "Oh, YouTube is gearing more towards like they want people to show their face." And I was like, "Nope, negative,
Mhm.
not doing that." So I'm like, TikTok as well. I'm like, "Nope, you're not gonna find me dancing." That's why I feel like Reels is my safety zone because it's just my
Sure.
hands working, you know?
Well, and I think I mean, you're not alone in having this discomfort, whether we're talking about putting yourself on social media or just putting yourself in your scrapbooks.
Right.
And you were talking before that it felt a little vain to scrapbook only about yourself in certain projects. And I think there's different societal messages, there's the way you were raised, there's so many different factors that come into play that can make us feel a little insecure
Yeah.
about showing ourselves and being vulnerable.
Right. Right. You're right. So slowly working on that.
Yes, we're always all working on that, I think.
Yep.
So, but you did take the brave step of launching a podcast. Can you tell us more about it and what some of your goals are with the show?
Yeah. So I started Storytellers podcast, and I really wanted to focus on. So I was on your show in August. Was it August? I believe. But it was for
I know it was like
October.
pre-October daily, so probably August or September, yeah.
Yeah. And I really fell in love with the way you do things, like, so
Oh, thank you.
inspirational, so, like, motivating, and, like, I kept telling myself, "Okay, if anything, this is the way." I wanna take notes, and if there's ever a time where I want to create my own podcast, I wanna do it like Jen. And I kept telling Albert, like, "Oh, Jen knows how to do it." Like, and so, like, "Oh, Jen uses this." And he's like, "Who is this Jen?" Like, and so, I, took note, and I said, "I want to do this." And I had been thinking about it, but I was like, "No, I kept talking myself out of it, and I kept saying, "No,
Mhm.
there's no need for that. Nobody wants that. That's just lame." And so I talked myself out of it. And in January, at the end of December, I'm like, "You know what? Here are your goals." And I kind of do like a little vision board of pictures, and I
Mhm.
put a podcast mic on there, and I'm like, "That one's funny because I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to start a podcast." And so I'm like, "But I'll just put it on my vision board." And at the end of December, I was like, "I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Like, just jump and do it." And so I did. I started it, and with the goal in mind of that is that I have 10 pictures of my childhood.
Mhm.
I have no stories written at all about me from my childhood. My parents don't have anything. My husband's parents don't have anything. We probably collectively have 40 photos between us all. My kids have no way of knowing any of that. There's no stories written down. And I keep thinking, unless you tell me the story and I write it down, I've had to ask my mom some stories and then I write them down, then we don't know the stories behind any of us. And I kept thinking, like, what stops us, like me, what stops me from writing those things when I have all the resources? My parents didn't have the resources. They were poor in Mexico. They didn't have pictures, they didn't have a photographer,
Mhm.
they didn't have any of that. So what is stopping me from writing my story? And I thought about that over and over, and I'm like, what stops us from doing that? And, like, are we shy? Are we, what is it? And so I really thought about it, and I thought, there's different stages in our lives where, of course, there's more stories to tell. And there's just stages in our lives where we don't want to tell the story, for whatever reason, trauma.
Certainly.
And there's there's just, all these reasons. And I thought, okay, I want to create a podcast that shares from our perspective, of course, the creative storytelling, scrapbooking perspective of how we tell stories at different stages and walks of life,
Mm.
and how we can help each other out in encouraging each other, motivating each other, inspiring each other to tell those stories, because every stage is completely different. Like, I remember when I had my kids, they're 13 months apart, my last two. During that stage, I have 0 pages, nothing written down, no scrapbooks, nothing. I took like 4 years off because I was too busy, craving sleep,
Yes, yeah.
And
No,
it
for
was like,
sure.
there's no way. Like, I was craving a shower, not not writing a story down. And we have these remarkable people in this community that, they bust out a baby. It's like they popped it out like, yesterday, and the next day they're writing stories, and I'm like, what? You're making a scrapbook like you just had a baby like last week. And I'm so inspired by people that can, work through traumas and work through whatever's thrown at them in life, and they still write a story down. So I was like, you know what? You need to share with, the whole population. How are you doing it in each stage, to continue to be motivated and write these stories down? And I thought, okay, how else can I like do it without showing my face?
Mhm.
Because there was a point where I was like, I should probably put it on stories, and have people like interview, like the way the BFF sticker girls do it. And I was like, nah, because then that would mean that I would have to show my face. And I'm like, okay, check that off. No, no, thanks. And I thought, okay, a podcast. I'll talk to people and have these raw conversations with them and talk to them, and ask them, how do they do it in their lives at this stage? Because I want to know, and I'm sure other people want to know. And so that's how it started. And that's where it comes from. And I don't know how long I'll do it for. It might just be a short little mini project and I'll be bored of it. But for now, I really want to focus on, how do people tell their stories, and why they're telling their stories, and how can they motivate us to do it when we're stuck.
Yes, that's the important part for sure.
Yeah,
Because we often will get stuck in our own unique ways too, and so I think that's really an opportunity to really see yourself in someone else who's been stuck in the same way and was able to move past that.
right, right.
Yes.
And I've
So,
been
yeah, I'm so thrilled for you. This has been so exciting to watch this show come to be. I'm always asked, "Can you put out more episodes in a week?" No, I physically cannot do that.
right,
But so I love that we have a growing number of shows in the industry, and just you and I have chatted, that there's just this spirit of collaboration and support for one another is important to both of us. And so
right.
I'm just curious if you have more thoughts on that. Why is it important to you?
Right. I've had some situations where it's like people are not very welcoming. And, that's happened throughout the entire time, right? I had my own business, my own brand, my own manufacturing company. And even then I wasn't welcome. There was some people, they get really, what is it, threatened. They feel a little threatened by you coming into their space, which they feel it's like their space, right? And you were not like that. And that's one of the things that I mean, I've sent you messages and really felt like, you are, if people didn't know, you honestly have, blinders on, and you're like, let's go. I have a goal in mind. You have a goal in mind, and I don't care. I'm staying in my lane, you stay in yours. And I feel like that's the way we should all work, is that we do have our own set of goals, and it is okay to every once in a while, high five people along the way that are right next to you in that aisle, like, whoo, go girl, because we're missing the whole bigger picture. We all have, um, certain talents and certain gifts that we each give this community, because it's a lot of work. Podcasting is a lot of work. It is not.
Yes.
You think like, "Oh, how hard can it be? I'll just get a mic and I'll talk into it." No, there's like, there's appointments and editing and, making sure sound's okay, and there's all these things that you should be high-fiving people along the way. They're trying to figure it out as well, and you have a lot of experience in this. And so for you to be like, welcome aboard, and high-fiving me, I felt like, yes, that's the way I want to be. When someone asks me questions, I don't know how many times I will DM people when they ask me a question, whether it be scrapbook related, podcast related, whatever. And then I'll respond with, "Oh, I got it here. I did this. I went on Amazon. Here's the link to this and here." And they're like, "Oh, you just shared everything with me." And I'm like, "Why wouldn't I?" Like,
Yes, yes. No, 100% agree.
and they're like, "But some people don't." And I'm like,
Yeah,
but that's not what our community is about. We hear over and over women empowering women, and I don't believe that until your actions speak louder than your words, because you can keep saying that over and over. And then behind the scenes, you're not very empowering. You're ignoring those DMs and not responding to people and not helping them. So to me, I felt like you were the only one. I will put that out there. The only one that high fived me along the way. And I'm like, what? That's why I was like, Jen, we shall collab.
yes,
We
yeah, no, and that's, I know the community that I wanna be a part of is one where we are high-fiving each other and encouraging it, because if we don't, then this industry doesn't exist anymore.
right,
If we only if it's only just, one big box manufacturer
right,
who makes everything, then eventually it will just peter out. So they as in the manufacturers, they need us to be doing things, to be talking about the products, to be using the products, and keeping people interested and motivated and empowered to tell their stories. So, yeah, I'm still high-fiving you all the way.
right. I just met someone at a scrapbooking store in Southern California, and she said, what got me was that I DM'd you one day and I was asking you about like how you make your pictures this size, blah, blah, blah. She goes,
Mhm.
you gave me the app, you gave me this, you gave me that. She goes, why? And I said, oh, because I welcome everyone into this vortex
Yeah,
that is going to suck all your money dry. I'm like, the more people that I have that I can talk to about this hobby, because I have friends that I don't talk to them at all about this. I have sisters that I don't talk to them about my podcast or my scrapbooking because they can't relate. And so the more people I
correct.
can
Yep.
suck into this, the better for me. I don't feel like an oddball. So yeah.
Well, and I also think with podcasts, because for better or worse, we're still more on the cutting edge than not. It is a silly newer format, and it's my hope that we can bring younger audiences into the
Right.
fold and show them that we do have so much variety, so many opportunities to do things differently, and it's not scrapbooking is not necessarily what you think it is. It certainly can be, and you can certainly love that so much, but it can be so many different things too.
Right. You're right. I'm trying to get my daughter to like it.
Me too. Yes.
Well, next
Actually,
time
my daughter just asked if I would help her create a Pokemon scrapbook. So I'm like, we'll figure it out.
That's probably what my daughter wants. She's all obsessed with Pokemon.
Love it. So Veronica, this has been so delightful. What are you working on this year? Will you be doing October daily and December daily again? What's on your creative agenda for the rest of the year?
Yes, I always create, so there are summer books. I create them in the Life Crafted album and a citrus twist kits. And then I also create an October daily and then well, I call it like a December memories book. But I'm thinking that this year, instead of going daily for the October, I think I'm going to make it into a memories because
Mm,
I'm pulling the pressure off of me. I felt like I always have to like go, 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 go. Like it has to be daily. And the more I talk to people in the community through the podcast, I'm slowly releasing that pressure of it doesn't have to be daily and it doesn't have to be created in October. And it is okay if I don't even create one, which I know people are going to say, no, you have to make one. But I am trying to take away the pressure of I want to create more just to create and less for Instagram.
yes, yes, yes. No, I love that. The project I ended up doing was not what I started, but I ended up mining many past years of Octobers. What are the things that we do in October? Because particularly last year and the year before, we weren't really doing that much yet
Right.
or at all. And so it made much more sense to just look back over the past decade and do a project that way. So there's always a way forward, including sometimes opting out and saying, this is a great idea, but it's not for me right now or this year. And to just keep going with what is filling your bucket at the time.
Right. I agree. I did that with with the Disney album. I
Mhm.
kinda just compiled all the years of our Disney trips and put them in one album. I'm like, "I love that."
Yes, for sure. So can you remind our audience where we can find you online? Anything you have planned for the rest of the year in terms of your podcast or your more of your business life?
No, just I'm creating just for fun. That's my goal. My goal is to continue to I'm going to jump off of the reels of the daily reels that I've been creating. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to maybe just do a couple a week and only fun ones. I don't want to feel pressure to create. So I'm definitely going to start gearing my life towards more fun stuff for myself and less for, I don't know, following whatever it is that my mind thinks I need to be doing. But I do have an Instagram. I'm Veronica underscore creates and a YouTube, which I've been posting on there again, just to like check things out in a different, in a different platform. I'm like, what's it like over here? It's like, imagine me opening the door to a room and looking around and being like, okay, I don't like it in here. And I shut the door. I like Instagram the most. So that's where you can find me.
I definitely like Instagram a lot too. I often appreciate that it shows me things that I'm interested in. Like, so my recommended tab is always like scrapbook stuff, planners, curly hair,
Right.
and then like a few occasional celebrity pictures. So
That's funny. I
I
know.
appreciate that it knows me and for better or worse.
It's true. I have the same thing. I mine is always food, scrapbooking, and like mom stuff. I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, it's all me.
Yes. Well, we'll include all the links that we mentioned in the conversation in the show notes for this episode. Thank you again for spending time with me.
Thank you for having me.
And to all of our listeners, please remember that you have permission to scrapbook your way. Are you ready to start implementing the great ideas you hear on the podcast? The Simple Scrapper membership offers a welcoming space to connect with fellow memory keepers and find the creative accountability you've been craving. Visit simplescrapper.com/membership to learn more and join our community. It's the best it's ever been.